All right, let's go ahead and get started. Hi, everyone. My name is Tejasvini. I'm a youth advocate from the IHL YAC program, and I'm representing the Pacific Division here at Summit. So for those of you who don't know, IHL YAC basically just stands for International Humanitarian Law Youth Action Campaign, and it's basically a program where youth advocates learn and spread awareness about IHL. This event is part of our Summit series events, and Summit in general is just a great way to learn more about IHL and the Youth Action Campaign program in general. So we really do hope that all of you youth advocates here take away a lot of information from today's event, because the RFO program is a great way to get involved. So we really hope that the things you learn will be valuable to you. So without further ado, welcome to Restoring Family Links, A Walk in Their Shoes. Before we start, I would like to introduce today's facilitators and some of the members of our NHQ RFL team. So we have Margo Hillman, PJ Doyle, Paula McIntosh, Vicente Bamonde Angelo, and Jamina Shikani. Margo and PJ will be the primary facilitators for today's event, and the rest of the team will be with you in breakout rooms. So just as a disclaimer before we get started, we might run slightly longer than an hour, but do stay on for as long as you can. With that being said, I'll now pass it over to Margo for the next part of our presentation. Margo,
sorry about that. I had carefully muted myself. Welcome again to Restoring Family Links, A Walk in Their Shoes. We're so glad you can join us today. We have a lot of information to share with you about this unique Red Cross program. Before we get started, PJ and I are going to introduce ourselves. PJ, why don't you go ahead and then I'll pick up.
Okay, great.
Happy to do so. Good afternoon. My name is PJ Doyle, and I am a volunteer in the Twin Cities area chapter and part of the Minnesota Dakotas region. I also volunteer in disaster services. I've been a Red Cross volunteer for 31 years, and I've been a Red Cross RFL caseworker and IHL instructor for most of that time. Margo.
Thank you. And Christian, if you could move to the next slide, please. So I'm Margo Hillman. I retired in 2017 after 35 years as a Red Cross employee, mostly in information technology. But I started volunteering as an international services instructor in 2003. So getting close to 20 years as a volunteer instructor. As I approached retirement, I became an RFL caseworker, which had been on my bucket list, and then a casework instructor, and I'm now a Restoring Family Links mentor, and I facilitate the mentor training team. I live in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, which is part of the greater Pennsylvania region. Next slide, please. So our Restoring Family Links clients have all experienced some kind of separation from family members. That's why they have come to us for help. We're going to start with an activity that will help you understand what our Restoring Family Links clients may have experienced. And we'll go back and forth between saying Restoring Family Links and RFL, because if you're Red Crossers, you know how we love our abbreviations. We're going to move into breakout rooms for this activity. So Christian, if you could go ahead and open the breakout rooms, please.
One moment.
Okay, for those of you that have remained in the main room, this is actually going to serve as one of the breakout rooms. So as part of our opening activity, we would like for you to consider some things to help you think in terms of what some of our clients might have experienced during their separation from their family. So what I'd like for you to do is think about 3 items. The first is a person that is very important to you. The second is a specific thing, an item that you rely on, not a person, not a pet, but a physical thing. And the third would be an item that you feel is very important to you, that is something that helps you feel like yourself, that really is a key piece, that is an important item for you. And in the chat, if you would just write in the first, a person who is really important to you. The second is a thing that you rely on. And the third is an item that helps you feel like yourself. So I'll give you a couple of minutes to think about 1, 2, 3. Okay, great. Now, let's see here if I can advance the screen. And that's not working, but just imagine here that you are now, you are at home and a war breaks out in your home country. You suddenly have those 3 choices that we've listed are all that you have with you as you are forced to leave your home. The person who is traveling with you, the item that you rely on, and the third is a special item that means a great deal to you. So you are now leaving home. Those are the 3 things that you have with you. Now, after 7 days, you find yourself leading to the ocean. You are trying to leave the country. You are forced to leave, and you find yourself after several days crossing what seems like an endless sea, and you arrive at the shore of another country. In the chaos that ensues as your boat is pulling to shore, you lose that item that you had taken, that was something you relied on. And I see many of you put your cell phone or your glasses as an item that you would have taken with you. In the chaos, you've been separated from that, and there is no opportunity for you to replace it or find it. So you now are without that item. Now, moving forward, you join a line of people who are waiting to be told what to do. You're in a strange area. You do not know the language. You are simply lined up en masse, and you look down and you find that you have also lost the item that had meant a great deal to you. If it was a family heirloom, something, it may have been something financial that you had with you, it is now gone. And again, you have no opportunity to look for it. And as you approach the end of the line, you look around and you discover that you've been separated from your friend that was traveling with you. And you are told by those in charge at the line that you will have to look for them after you have gotten to the next step. They are now assigning locations for you to sleep, and you have no choice but to move and to hopefully find a way to reconnect with them later. But suddenly you have nothing with you but the clothes on your back. You have lost your friend, you've lost your item that you relied on, and you have lost that personal item as well. This is an experience that many of the folks that we deal with have had. They are, this is not a hypothetical situation. It is a memory that they are dealing with. So think in terms, I'd like for you to take a moment and consider how you would feel and the fearful sensations that you would be dealing with. And if you could either come off mute and share with us, or if you'd like to write into the chat how you feel about the loss of these items and what your situation is at the moment. hopeless, scared, lost, and helpless, lonely, and very sad.
Devastated, though I can't spell it.
Absolutely. Vulnerable, scared, and lonely. And keep in mind, these are sensations and fears that are not only overwhelming, but these are new to a lot of people. You've probably been in control of your life and your family for many years, and suddenly you are totally vulnerable and reliant on strangers and feeling unknown, sad and scared. This exercise is not meant to frighten, but it is meant to give you a chance to think in terms of what our clients might be feeling and the kinds of stress and memories that they will be dealing with as we are working with them in an attempt to reconnect them with that first person that they had been separated from in their travel. Any other comments or thoughts from the group? I see a lot of sensitive comments are being put into the chat. The Restoring Family Links training is something that is usually done in person, and it is a multi-hours training for the full course. This presentation today is meant to give you an opportunity to just understand a little bit better about what that service is that we provide to our clients. But I do want to stress that the sensations that we are asking you to consider in this opening session is a reality of what you will be dealing with clients. And so the sensitivity and the empathy that that we express to our clients is a key part of the services that we provide, that we try to understand. We may not totally understand, but we can empathize with the experiences that these folks are dealing with. And I will tell you that being able to help them overcome that loss is one of the greatest sensations that you can receive on your own as a volunteer with the Red Cross, to be able to help make that connection for them. And we will be talking a little bit more as this presentation proceeds about how that came to be a key part of the Red Cross, the American Red Cross, and the International Committee of the Red Cross services overall, that connecting family, and it remains key to today, both physically and certainly internationally, which is what we are talking about today. Any questions from the group? Comments, thoughts, any experiences you'd like to share? Should I come off mute? I thank you all for having checked in with us early, and we will resume to the full group and proceed with the presentation in just a couple of minutes. I will tell you that as a Red Cross volunteer for these many years, that the work with Restoring Family Links, it continues to be my favorite part of the work. See, I think the breakout rooms are closing in about a minute. And at that point, we will continue on with the discussion about Restoring Family Links. Jamina, welcome back.
Thank you.
I think we've got about a half a minute here. I think they're closed, but I'm not sure if they're back. Is there anything that we need to do, Jamina?
I don't think so. Everybody should be rolling back in, I think.
Okay.
Just a quick housekeeping, double check since we're back out of our breakout rooms and in the main room that you're on mute. Everyone, thanks.
And just FYI, one.
PJ, you're on mute.
Yeah, I was just saying that I was not able to move the slides forward. So that was one of the things that we didn't get a chance to test ahead of time. So we'll have to catch up the slides.
Okay, Christian, if you could move on to the next slide. Keep going. And when you get to the red, that's it. Perfect. Thank you. I hope everyone's back. Welcome back. The image on this slide is of a Red Cross message, also known as an RCM. Family members can use Red Cross messages to communicate when normal means of communication are not available. For example, RCMs might be used if a family member is in a refugee camp or detention center where normal postal and phone services are not available. This fictional Red Cross message shows a message sent by a woman in a camp in Tanzania to her brother, Jean-Philippe Kasongo, in the United States. We'll be using some of the information in this RCM in an activity later. There will be a link in the chat if you would like to download a copy. So, reflecting on the activity we just did, in the past few minutes, you've imagined being suddenly displaced from your home, separated from your family, and dropped into an unknown environment. This quick example gives you a general idea of what a Restoring Family Links client might have experienced. And I'm going to hand it over to PJ for the next, oh no, sorry, it's still me. Next slide, please. Getting ahead of myself. The Restoring Family Links mission, with partners in the Red Cross and Red Crescent network, the American Red Cross alleviates the suffering of family members separated internationally by war, disaster, migration, and other humanitarian emergencies. When tragedy strikes and circumstances force families to flee their homes, loved ones can become separated. When traditional methods of finding one another are not available or not successful, these families often need help to reconnect. The Red Cross helps thousands of these families every year through the Restoring Family Links program. Restoring Family Links services are provided by the Global Red Cross and Red Crescent network in countries around the world, including right here in the United States. We're going to take a quick look at the history of our work to reconnect families, and then we'll show how we help those families today. Next slide, please. The roots of Restoring Family Links go back to the foundation of the American Red Cross, actually to even before the American Red Cross. I'm sure you all know Clara Barton founded the American Red Cross in 1881, but she was connecting families even before that. Around the time of our Civil War, Clara Barton was employed at the US Patent and Trade Office in Washington, DC. As an aside, she was the first woman to hold that position. In 1861, following the first casualties of the American Civil War, which were riots in Baltimore, Clara Barton took care of wounded soldiers who had been brought to DC. In addition to bandaging their wounds, she helped them write letters to their families. On one of the bloodiest days of the Civil War, in September 1862, Clara Barton heard that there were tens of thousands of casualties at the Antietam battlefield in Maryland. She got permission from military authorities and drove all night from Washington. Remember, this isn't driving in a car, this is driving in a wagon, to deliver relief and first aid supplies to the wounded. The story is told that at Antietam, a bullet went through her clothes while she was tending to a wounded soldier during the fighting. The soldier died in her arms. She herself earned the title Angel of the Battlefield for her heroism delivering aid at Antietam. After Antietam, Clara started receiving letters from people all across the United States who had heard of her brave actions at Antietam and were searching for loved ones who'd gone missing for both the Union and the Confederacy. Remember, this is before dog tags and that kind of record keeping. So families often didn't know what had happened to their loved ones. President Lincoln was aware of Clara Barton's actions and made an appeal to the American public to contact Clara Barton if they were searching for loved ones. The volume of letters became so great that she opened a missing soldiers office on F Street in Washington. That office was rediscovered in recent years, and in normal times, it's a museum that you can visit. From that office, Clara helped locate and reconnect over 20,000 soldiers with their families following the war. She worked herself to exhaustion, as was her habit. After the war, her doctors advised her to travel to Europe to get some rest. While in Europe, she learned of Henry Dunant and his work following the Battle of Solferino in 1859, assisting wounded soldiers on both sides of the conflict. Dunant's experiences in Solferino, including delivering messages from wounded soldiers to their families, led to the development of the First Geneva Conventions and the International Committee of the Red Cross, and eventually to today's Red Cross and Red Crescent network, the very reason that we're here today. During the Franco-Prussian War in 1870 to 71, the International Committee of the Red Cross obtained lists of French prisoners held by German forces and notified their families of their fate. Returning back to Clara's story, she came back from Europe, from her, quote, rest cure, unquote, inspired, and worked to establish the American Red Cross. So you can see that since the beginning, restoring family links has been provided in some form or fashion. Moving on to today, the casework we see now spans from World War II to today's conflicts and disasters. Next slide, please, Christian. Those services fall into these main bundles. Tracing, which is searching for loved ones when you don't know exactly where they are or have a precise address. Family news, that's the exchange of messages between family members when there are no other means of communication available. Those are those Red Cross messages that you saw an image of a few minutes ago. Connectivity and phone service. This can be phone calls. It can, phone calls along borders. It can be providing Wi-Fi access to people who still have a device but don't have any way to connect. Charging stations, if you have a device but you haven't been able to charge it. And that can happen after a disaster as well as after some kind of international incident. And then finally, documentation. People may come to us to seek proof of time that they spent in detention. If they were a prisoner of war, the International Committee of the Red Cross may have visited them and recorded that visit and then can provide documentation to show that they were indeed a prisoner of war. Sometimes it's just they want documentation for themselves to validate their experience. Restoring Family Links also works with our disaster reunification colleagues in time of disaster to reconnect people as following a disaster or incident within the United States. Mechanisms include facilitating acting upon urgent requests like those involving unaccompanied minors, separated children, reestablishing contact with family members who have been separated within a disaster area, and working with our partners to resolve reunification related inquiries within the United States. Next slide, please. So what happens when an RFL client wants to request our help? Well, an inquirer can request services in 3 ways. They can contact their local chapter and speak directly to an RFL caseworker. They can contact us through the National Helpline phone number represented on the bottom of this slide. And they'll then be referred to a local chapter or talk to a national headquarters caseworker if there's not quite enough information to send it directly to a chapter, or they can fill out a web inquiry form on redcross.org, which goes directly to national headquarters so they can figure out where it needs to go for response. Once the inquiry is received at national headquarters, excuse me, let me back up a minute. The local chapter then meets with the person requesting services, figures out what's needed, collects scads of information that's needed in order to fulfill the request, and sends it on through a secure database to our national headquarters team. National headquarters reviews it and sends it out to the appropriate National Society office or the International Committee of the Red Cross delegation, where the service on the other end will be performed. The recipient on the other end does their work out in the field, and then they send our national headquarters a response. National headquarters reviews that, registers it in our secure database, and sends it back to the local chapter to report back to our inquirer. The whole system can also work in reverse. We receive requests from other national societies or from the International Committee of the Red Cross delegation. Those requests get reviewed, registered in the database, and assigned to the appropriate local chapter for action, which could be searching for someone, it could be delivering a Red Cross message. Those are our 2 most common actions. Volunteers do a whole lot of this work and provide vital support to our clients throughout the duration of their cases, starting with gathering that information, continuing with delivering news, and just staying in touch with them so that if we hear something, well, both to be supportive, and if we hear something, then we still have current contact information. And here is where I hand off to PJ for some personal stories from clients which show the impact of our services. And Christian, if you could move to the next slide.
Thank you, Margo. Yes, this is an opportunity for us to give you a little history of some real life interactions that we've had to know that we do make a difference through all of this work. The picture on the screen was taken in the Doyle refugee camp in Chad. The picture the young boys are holding is of their mom. And that picture was taken at the Tucson, Arizona Red Cross chapter office. Their mother left Central African Republic in 2013 because of the armed conflict there. And from there, she went to the Doyle refugee camp in Chad. Her sons remained behind with their father in Central African Republic. Years passed, and in 2018, their mother was able to resettle to the United States as a refugee. The boys left their village and walked all the way to Chad to look for their mother, unaware that she had resettled into the USA. Their mother eventually came to the Red Cross office in Tucson and opened a tracing inquiry to try and look for and find her 2 sons. Boys, now ages 12 and 13, found in the Doyle camp in Chad by the Red Cross colleagues in that country. One of the boys is holding a picture of their mother that was taken in Tucson and forwarded to our colleagues at the camp and let them know that we had found their mother. And their mother made a phone call to her kids recently, right from that same Red Cross office. Next slide, please. reconnection, we talked about a reconnection with the boys and their mother that took about 5 or 6 years. But there are even longer opportunities to reconnect. After 72 years, these sisters who had been separated were able to be reconnected because of the help of the Red Cross. During the siege of Leningrad in World War II, 2 little girls, Tamara and her older sister Lydia, suffered through the death of their mother, and then their father was sent to a German labor camp. Suddenly, with no one to care for them, the 2 girls were placed in separate sections of a local orphanage before being moved with other evacuees to a monastery in Lithuania. Both girls were eventually adopted by separate families. Luckily, their father survived the war, and eventually he relocated the daughters, but contact was lost again when he had to leave the youngest daughter, Tamara, and with her adopted family because of her illness. Now Lydia, the older sister, was separated from her sister for 7 decades by the Iron Curtain and the Cold War. Eventually, the younger sister Tamara moved to the United States, married, and settled in California, where she tried to cope with the loss of her family, never being able to speak of her sister, her adoption, or her experience to her American family. But the sisters never forgot each other, even though they were separated, and they never gave up hope. Lydia, the older sister, now living in Finland, contacted the Finnish Red Cross to search for her sister. Finally, Tamara was located, and after 72 years apart, they were able to meet again in person together, reunited in Finland. You can see the reunion photo on the screen. Next slide. So now we are going to do a little role play activity to give you an opportunity to experience what the Red Cross can do at the local level. Margo?
Okay. In this activity, the instructor in each breakout room will play various community members. Some of you will pretend, some of you participants, not the instructors, will pretend to be American Red Cross caseworkers. Our caseworkers always work in pairs, so we'll ask for 2 volunteers at a time. Remember, this is a role play, and it's okay to make mistakes. Those of you who are not playing caseworkers can think about what questions you might have asked while you watch the role play. The scenario is that our local Red Cross office needs to deliver a Red Cross message. The message is directed to Mr. Jean-Philippe Cassango at Crystal Pines in the United States. That may sound familiar since you saw an image of this Red Cross message on screen. The message is from his sister, Dominique Cassango, who is living in a refugee camp in Tanzania. They are both Congolese. And there is a link in the chat if you'd like to download a copy of that Red Cross message. The slide on screen represents our local community. We have figured out through our online searching that Crystal Pines is an apartment complex. We decided to start our search by visiting the apartment complex. We also know that there's a refugee resettlement agency in the area. Every refugee resettlement agency will have a receptionist who knows the clients coming in for services. And finally, while we were doing our online search, we also learned that there were some Congolese businesses, including a Congolese restaurant in one of the ethnic neighborhoods. The restaurant owner is there every day and probably knows many of his customers. A couple of other points before I send you off to your breakout rooms. As caseworkers, you may disclose Jean-Philippe Cassango and his sister Dominique's names and country of origin. You may not share any other information about them, and you may only deliver the Red Cross message to Jean-Philippe. And I want to answer a question that was in the chat about Red Cross messages. They are limited to news of a personal nature and family news. So no politics, no local or world news. A religious sentiment wishing God's blessings on someone would be fine, but personal and family news is the point, because the point is to reconnect with your family. Now, as you go to the breakout rooms, think about who you might talk with at Crystal Pines and what you might say. And now, Christian, you can open the breakout rooms and off we go.
PJ, I think
Yep.
we can't hear you.
Okay. Thank you very much for any questions before we start the role play. That anyone have any questions about what we're doing? I'd like for two of our Youth Action Committee members to serve as a Red Cross caseworker or as Red Cross caseworkers. Can you come off mute and identify yourselves if you are part of the YAC?
I'm a part of the YAC.
Okay, great. I would like for you both to serve as in this exercise, to serve as a Red Cross caseworker and lead the questioning as we move through the options of where we are conducting the search. I'll play the role of the Crystal. We'll start in the Crystal Pines apartment. Let's see, I don't know if you can see that very well.
I can.
Okay, and so I will serve as the apartment complex manager. And if you would proceed to ask me what kinds of questions and information that you might want from me as you're looking for the search. Siva, do you want to start?
Yes.
What would you ask me?
Were there any suspicious objects there?
If you have gone out and are searching and you have the Red Cross message and are trying to find the client, probably would want to know maybe at that apartment, since the message said Circle Pines, would you have assumed that that might have been the address? What might be a question you ask me as a manager? Anyone else from the group have a question that you think you might want to ask if I were a manager and you had the Red Cross message in your hand?
Do you know the person, or do they live there?
That's a very good start. Absolutely. Just come right out and ask if you recognize the name. Likely, depending on the apartment complex, I can tell you that most residences would be somewhat hesitant to give you too much information for privacy's sake. But what they might do is to give you a general answer, such as they may say that we do have a large population of Congolese that live in the apartment complex, or they may direct you to a directory like the mailbox that in the lobby, if that were posted there. So you might be able to just simply do some physical search by just looking at the list of residents. But you also, we recommend as a Red Cross volunteer, if you are going to be going out with to attempt to deliver the message, the expectation is you may or may not actually connect with the client, but you could certainly leave a message for him and ask him to call the Red Cross if he's not there. So you could take along a letter saying that the Red Cross is trying to reach, and the name of the addressee to the message. And you could either leave that with the manager and ask he or she to pass it on if they know that person. You also could actually create a flyer, and there are samples that are available for the Red Cross volunteers to use to set this up. I will tell you that quite often when I am trying to locate someone to deliver a Red Cross message or to conduct a search in Minnesota, I oftentimes will put a flyer up in a community area that just simply says the Red Cross is trying to reach the name and ask them to contact the Red Cross. We cannot share the contents of the message except with the individual, just as the Postal Service will only deliver to the addressee. However, we can certainly let the general community know we are looking for someone, so that and ask them to contact us directly, where we can then verify whether it is the individual. And at that point, once we've confirmed who it is, then we can deliver the message. But in an apartment complex, it would be highly likely that we would either possibly talk to another resident that comes in the building, or through the manager, and it would be possible to leave either a flyer or to leave a letter addressed to them and ask that person to deliver it. And again, that letter that we would be leaving, asking them to contact us, would simply be that the Red Cross has a message. We don't need to go into any detail about what is in that. It still maintains the privacy of the individual. Any other thoughts or questions that you might have as you are approaching an apartment complex in an attempt to find an addressee for a message?
Excuse me, I've encountered situations where a person came into the country with a visa but didn't go home when the visa expired. So they're going to be reluctant to come forward.
There are absolutely, and again, that's one of the reasons why the Red Cross is able to connect with individuals, because we are not, since we are not connected to the government, we are not going to turn anyone in. We are our neutrality is an important part of how we develop trust with our clients and with the immigrant population. So very often that is the case, and quite frequently by working through other community entities that have had experience with the Red Cross, they are able to verify, if you will, or to vouch for the Red Cross, and so that people can feel more comfortable being able to share their whereabouts or information. I will also say another possibility that occasionally you would run into in a residential situation like an apartment complex. You may actually encounter the Postal Service, maybe they're delivering mail. And you could send a letter to that address addressed to the C that simply said, please contact the Red Cross, we have information. and then ask for a return if a return delivery if it's not deliverable. And that oftentimes you may get it back with a forwarding address, or they may be able to deliver it for you without again, without disclosing the information in the actual message. The Postal Service is as well. Okay, any other questions or thoughts about the apartment complex? Okay, let's move on over to the Resettlement Agency. For those of you that are familiar with the refugee situation, there are a number of organizations, resettlement agencies, who are charged with providing services to new arrival refugees, helping them to become settled after they have been officially into the U.S. Oftentimes, they will come through a resettlement agency that helps them identify a place to live, will help them get settled, and with some financial assistance for the first month or so of their stay, helping connect them with medical and educational services. And the refugee resettlement agencies are also good resources to help you to identify individuals that may need the Red Cross services. So by developing relationships with these resettlement agencies, they not only can help us connect with their clients when we are conducting search or delivering messages, but also letting them know that if they have clients who from their family, that they are encouraged to come to the Red Cross to see if we can help them in their attempts to reconnect. So let's move on to our services that we are going to on our search. We're now going to go over to the Refugee Resettlement Center. And here, the receptionist very often is, as is the case in many businesses, the person who gets a chance to see the clients and customers as they come through and move about their business within the organization. So I will assume the role of the refugee resettlement receptionist. And who would like to ask me questions? You are now trying to deliver this message. And what would you like to ask me? What are the questions that you would like to ask? If you come off mute and ask a question, that would be great.
I could if you want me to.
Yes, please do.
Okay, well, my first thought would be to ask, first to say who I am and explain my mission. And then also ask if they have a Congolese population that they've been helping. And then once I had warmed up that person and sort of proved myself as someone who was Red Cross, I might just go and say, well, here's the person that we have a message for. Do you happen to know this person? Since they're kind of on our team, right? Because they care.
Exactly. Exactly. And you hit upon some really key points. Number one, being able to identify that you are with the Red Cross. That is an important part. Previously, we will hopefully have developed, at least to let the agency understand that the Red Cross services are there. That's part of the outreach work that we do in advance. And second of all, just to provide some identification, whether it is your Red Cross badge, you may have a business card that says you're part of a Restoring Family Links team. We also encourage you to to make these excursions, make these searches in pairs for a couple of reasons. Number one, we want to make sure that there's safety in numbers, but also it's always a good idea to have a second person there to help take notes and to provide the extra questions. So number one, make sure that you have identified who you are. And again, as before, the obvious question is that we are trying to reach an individual to provide Red Cross message. So the upfront question, the basic question is, do you know them? And if they do, that is clearly leads to your next step of how to connect with that individual to exchange the message. But again, as before, with the Crystal Pines apartments, we would encourage you to take along a letter that explains that you are trying to reach this person and why, and a flyer. And at the same time, additionally, it's always a good idea, particularly for your work with another business organization like the Refugee Resettlement, but even at the Crystal Pines apartment complex, to take along some of the brochures that we have that explain what the Red Cross Restoring Family Link services are, so that individuals who may have a need may be seeking to connect with their own family members will understand that this is something the Red Cross can help. And as with the flyers and with the sample letters, there are a number of individual sheets that have been translated into numerous languages, so that in the event that you encounter either an apartment that has a large population or a business in the community that services a large population, we can leave those flyers there in the language of that group in order to encourage them to reach out to the Red Cross. And we'll talk a little bit more about the outreach piece later on this afternoon in this presentation. So the short letters to the clients, basically just saying that we have a message, that we are trying to reach an individual, and how they can reach the Red Cross, whether it's by email, by phone, and what the next steps will be. You will oftentimes get a call back from someone who says, oh yes, I know this individual, just tell me and I'll pass it along. We notify that we are speaking with the individual before we share the message itself. That needs to be confirmed that it only is for their eyes only. Any other thoughts about if you were at a resettlement agency? There are other agencies and groups within your community that may work with certain populations. The same kind of exchange could take place at any one of them. This is just one sample of a group. There are a number of organizations that provide services of one sort or another to either refugees in general or to certain populations. So building relationships with them will help you when you find yourself in a position of wanting to connect with an individual in a specific area. Okay, we've determined that there is a population that lives in Crystal Pines. We also understand that the Resettlement Agency has done services with this population, but are not familiar with the individual. So we move into the community. Part of our research in advance has told us that there are a number of community groups and businesses along a neighboring street, including a restaurant. So we're going to move over and go into the Congolese restaurant, and I will serve as your hostess. and welcome you to the Congolese Diner. So let me know if, can I come to the diner? What questions might you have? I'm not hearing any.
Well, you could introduce yourself and say that you're with the Red Cross, and then you can ask the hostess or you, have you heard of so and so? You know, the person that we're looking for. Or have they like stopped by frequently there? You're on mute.
Can you hear me now? Uh-oh.
We can hear
Yes.
you.
Oh, okay, good. Sorry. So in this instance where I'm going to tell you that, yes, actually, I do recognize that name. That's a client that comes in here pretty frequently. In fact, usually comes in for supper about 6 p.m. Would you like to leave that message with me? I'll be happy to give it to him.
Yes, thank you.
So would you leave it with me, or would you could leave one of the letters, or what might you do if you know he's coming to dinner at 6 o'clock?
Just wait till they come to dinner?
Right, come back at 6 o'clock. And I think that the lesson that we want to put forward in this piece is that the community itself is a great resource to find individuals, because when you are in a new place, you very often gravitate towards whether it's restaurants or businesses, barbershops that have clients that are the same, with the same background. And another thing to keep in mind, just in case of the Resettlement Agency or at the Crystal Pines, we want to make sure that we are taking time to introduce ourselves and identify ourselves as being with the Red Cross. But also, it would not be a bad idea, just out of courtesy, to sit down in the restaurant and have a cup of coffee, or to develop a little bit of rapport, not only because we want to get a hold of our addressee, but this may be a great opportunity for us to share the Red Cross message with their clients, and with their permission, we could perhaps leave some of the Red Cross brochures, or business cards, in case individuals may need the Red Cross services. And we'll talk a little bit more later on when we talk about our outreach work. And it's also a good opportunity for us to share the other services that the Red Cross can offer, whether it is disaster or blood services in those areas that have blood, some of the classes that we may offer. It's a good way for us to develop some rapport in the community with these organizations and with these small businesses. So going back to the restaurant at 6 o'clock, we would take the message. And what would you do when we walk in at 6 o'clock? How would you hand it over to the first person that identifies themselves as the addressee?
Well, you could ask them some personal questions first to see like if they're who they are, who they actually say they are.
Exactly. So
because at that point we can disclose the information because they are the person we're looking for. They're not just some random person we just met. Well,
and some of the questions, if we ask for identification, if they have an ID that has a picture and the name that matches, if you go back and take a look at the actual message itself, you will note that there are some other facts that are included in the message that would be easy enough for us to ask questions about to verify if you felt unsure that this was the individual, such as I don't have the message up on the screen, but one of the questions that we ask as we are preparing a Red Cross message or when we are conducting a search, we ask them for the name of their parents, their birth dates, and other factors to identify the individual and the family connection. So if they're able to answer those questions, then we can, if we don't have an identification per se, we are able to confirm it by matching the information. Also, and the questions that we ask are not necessarily because we feel that we're going to have to use that to identify the individual, make sure to match them. But very often we are dealing with names that are fairly familiar or fairly common within one group or another. So we want to make sure that we have the right individual to make sure that it is that is the person who is the brother to Dominique, and that we are passing along the message to the correct individual. In the chat, there are some good suggestions there. If you were at a restaurant and they did not have, if they didn't know the name, didn't recognize the name per se, someone said you could ask if they have a list of regular past customers that you could see. If they're willing to share that with you, that would be another way of being able to go down a list of participants or of clients. The habit of curiosity is a good skill to develop if you're going to be doing casework, because being able to go out and do a search, very often the information that we receive, whether it's a message or a request for tracing, has somewhat limited information to start with. And that is where you have to put on a thinking cap and to begin to do some actual search in a number of different ways. We have gotten messages where it is just the name and that it was Minnesota. So it could be anywhere in the state. And so we have worked with either resettlement agencies or in the community at large. If we know there is a large population in one area of town or one city within the state, that can help us to try and narrow down our search. So the request, when it comes in, can very often take weeks for us to exhaust a number of different avenues in an attempt to make that connection. So we very doggedly work on it, but it is quite satisfying to be able to make a connection. Thoughts or questions about the process? I will also share with you when we talk about the outreach piece. I mentioned that we work with other lines of service at the Red Cross, and being able to tell our clients in the communities or the organizations and businesses within the community about Red Cross services can also benefit the other lines of service. And I'll give you an example. Thanksgiving, a couple of years ago, there was a fire in a high-rise in Minneapolis that impacted a large population of East African residents. And the apartment manager was very reluctant to let the Red Cross in to speak with clients as they were dealing with the fire. So what our international volunteer team had developed relationship with a number of the restaurants and businesses along a corridor on a street near where the apartment was. And so we created flyers and took them hand to hand, handed them out at these businesses along Cedar Avenue to let them know that the Red Cross was available to help anyone that had been impacted by the fire. And because those businesses had already worked with the Red Cross International team on restoring family links, they were willing to put the signs up and pass out the flyers. And within a couple of hours, we were able to get enough of a contact so that the management of the building then opened up and actually set up a room for the Red Cross to come in and provide services for the people that had lost their homes because of the fire. So it was a perfect example of how working within the Red Cross to be able to share our connections and provide better service to the clients overall. So I encourage you to think about that as you're working with Red Cross in other lines of service. There are ways that we can provide services and connections to some of the vulnerable populations that we deal with on a daily basis. So the work that you do in restoring family links has got benefit beyond just the restoring family links. Okay, it looks like we're just about ready to come back into a full class or full session.
Yeah, PJ, I think my room is back. I think the rest are rolling in. Some may have dropped off because of time.
Okay.
Should we wait a little longer or?
Yeah, I think they're just the last few seconds here. It'll pop up. I don't know if
I think we're missing Vicente.
Margo's group.
Yeah, Margo and Vicente, I think we're missing their group.
Okay.
I wonder if it's because I was speaking as we were signing off.
Everyone's back in the room.
Oh, we are all
breakout
back
rooms are
in.
closed.
Okay, great. Okay. Again, we talked in terms of the conducting a search and did a little exercise in order to think about what we end up doing in order to identify and find the clients, whether it's tracing or delivering a message. But it was a good example of how the Red Cross works with partners in a number of ways. I oftentimes say when I talk about community partnerships on the disaster side that the Red Cross is not a one-man band. We work best when we work collectively in the community. The work in outreach is important to ensure that we are able to make connections when we have clients who need our services. The refugee resettlement agencies, the ethnic restaurants are only two examples. Finding individuals and connecting with clients is an important part, an important reason for doing this outreach, to get the message across that the Red Cross has these services available. But also a key function that we do in Restoring Family Links is called information and referral. Many of the clients who come to us may not have, their question may be beyond what the Red Cross service actually is. If we're able to give them a referral to an agency or an organization that can better meet their needs, we are doing a good service to that client. In fact, very often, more often than not, the referral is something that is more common for us to do than an actual casework itself. It's also an opportunity for us to involve our volunteers, to engage our volunteers in with the Red Cross. Again, the casework itself, there may be only a few cases per year that a chapter or a region deals with, but there is always an opportunity to build connections through outreach. And volunteers can do this can really take an opportunity to become involved that way. Identifying the demographics of your area, the services that are currently available. And I mentioned in our breakout room about having flyers and resources, brochures explaining our services available. This can all be part of the outreach work that we do. Also being aware of what's happening in the news, the work that's going on between the International Red Cross and the activities in Ukraine or in Afghanistan, as well as natural disasters that occur. The work that we do in Restoring Family Links, our outreach can be enhanced by the time we spend connecting with populations that may be impacted by any of these events on the national scene. In the interest of time, I know this has been already has gone over, but I would be more than happy to speak to outreach. If anyone would like to contact me directly, I'll be happy to give you more information about that.
But can I ask a quick question?
Please do.
Well, we have access to like the role play, because I can see using this in my classroom, especially this year, trying to teach the Red Cross and what they do.
Absolutely.
So I was just curious. I mean, it was wonderful. It was great to go in a breakout room, actually like use this stuff hands-on. So I was just curious if this would be accessible, if there's like any write-up on how to do it or anything like that.
I'm sure that you'll be able to get a copy of the presentation, but also I will tell you that there is a full Restoring Family Links course available, and there's also an abbreviated introduction to Restoring Family Links available on the EDGE training. But I'm sure we can arrange for copies of the materials.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
We did get another question, maybe Vicente and I can address in one of the breakout rooms, that they were told that Red Cross messages cannot include even a religious blessing. So yeah, I just want to reiterate what Margo said earlier, that it can say something like, you know, bless you or something like that. That's appropriate. That's within the guidance. Does anybody have further questions on that? Or Vicente, did you want to elaborate on that at all?
Well, it's exactly what you said. People have different beliefs. People have different perspective of how to communicate with, how I communicate with my family, and how other people can communicate that is different from mine. It's a personal communication. And then, you know, we obviously, because the fundamental principles, this is something that is personal, and we respect that in any time. Something, it's a communication between two family members, then it's totally fine to see these kind of things. Yeah.
Absolutely. Thanks, Vicente.
It occurred to me when the question came up in my breakout room that there might be specific situations in which it was recommended against just because of religious tensions or something. So.
Yeah, and I think we would just a case by case basis, look, you know, if we felt. Were you going to say something, Vicente?
Yeah, that's true. But sometimes we will not be able to see, for instance, if the Red Cross message, and this happened before actually, there's a very good point, Margot. If sometimes we don't have visibility, or we don't know, even from HQ, we don't know what is going to be the sensibilities where this Red Cross message is going, especially if it's somebody that is in a detention center. But the ICRC will help us to identify that. And probably they will kind of censor this piece of information with, some kind of ink or something like that on top of that before they deliver this message to the detainee, or sometimes it will be delivered directly, the Red Cross message to the authorities for them to deliver the Red Cross message to the detainee.
Thanks, Vicente and Marco. I think, yeah, Tejasvini and PJ, I'm sorry to interrupt you there. Let you go ahead.
All right, no problem. No, those were great questions and lots of information that we learned. So before we wrap up for today, I'm just going to go over a couple of the remainder of the YAC Summit series events that we have. So as I mentioned earlier, today was the RFL simulation that we had, and that was part of the YAC Summit series events. But next up, we have the National Symposium on the July 26th, where we'll be having advocate teams from all over the country present their campaigns from the 2021 season. The deadline to register to present has already passed, but you can still register and watch and celebrate our advocates' impressive work. So that's equally as important. So we highly recommend that you register and attend if you can. On July 27th, we have a career panel called Charting Your Career, where you'll get to learn more about different career paths from Red Cross and other professionals. And even if you're not interested in IHL as a career, or if you want to go into medicine or like engineering or something like that, we still highly recommend attending, since we'll be having employees from like lots of different fields. And it's a great opportunity that you definitely can't get anywhere else. On the 29th, we have a super fun event. It's called Harry Potter and the Deathly Violations of IHL Part 2. And you definitely don't want to miss out on it. You'll get to learn more about IHL and also relate the concepts to something that might be more familiar. So it's definitely a different perspective. And if you want to join earlier for a special sorting hat ceremony, you can definitely do that as well. Last event, we have the National Showcase on July 30th, which is a great opportunity to learn more about the YAC program from our summit representatives, get an introduction to next year's theme, and also meet other advocates. So all of these events are amazing opportunities to learn and network. So definitely feel free to invite other youth volunteers, your family, friends, and come to many of these as you can. All right, next slide. Thank you. Okay, almost done. This is the last one. Before we end today, we really just want to remind you guys to take advantage of the RFL program, especially to the YAC advocates. You definitely don't need any knowledge or anything to first get involved. Like, I didn't know anything about the program when I signed up to help out with this event, but there are lots of opportunities for everyone, just like everything in Red Cross, so definitely take advantage of them. There's more information about the program on the RFL website, which is at the top of the slide, so you can check that out for more information. Regarding IHL info, we have a blog called Rules of War, where you can learn more about our two programs. The IHL Adult Dissemination Program is an opportunity for you to become an instructor and teach IHL. And the other program, of course, is the IHL Youth Action Campaign program, which many of you are probably familiar with, but in case it's new, the program is centered around youth advocates and the campaigns they create to spread awareness about IHL. So you can sign up to become an advocate just to learn about the program and maybe get involved for the first time, or you can become a team lead and lead your own campaign on a regional level, and maybe you will be selected to attend a national event and represent your division. So there's a ton of options, and there are lots of opportunities that Red Cross offers in this space. So do take advantage of them. I know we say that a lot, but it really is true. If you have any questions, always feel free to contact the RFL or IHL teams. The two email addresses are on the slide, and they'll be glad to help you out. Okay, next slide. All right, and that pretty much wraps up this event. Thank you so much to the RFL team for working hard to host this amazing event. And thank you to everyone who attended and participated. We really hope you enjoyed this session and learned more about the RFL program and the amazing services that they provide. And if you have any more questions, feel free to stay on and ask the team directly or contact them via email. I know we went a little over time, but have a great day, and we hope to see everyone at these next few events. Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye. I'm going to hang on.
Thank you.
In case somebody has
Thanks
questions.
very much. Great session.